Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the first hour of the Chris McCarthy Show. So thankful that you decided to join me. We have our weekly guest, Congressman Bill Keating, on hold. He's going to come on and talk to us about a number of things, but I understand the Congressman is going to have some breaking news for us regarding NOAA and fishing and all that good stuff that we've been so focused on for so long here in the greater New Bedford area. Good morning, Congressman. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Chris.
How are things?
Well, on the first topic, things are terrific. Things have finally occurred just within the last hour. We've had the Sector 9. Those are the Greater Atlantic Fishing, interest. Their operation plan has been accepted. That's now official. It just was posted, as I said, within the last hour. And this is extremely important news for, the fishing community in New Bedford, something that we've been working towards, as you know, for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean? It means that immediately they can begin leasing, the quota that's there. The quota is the amount of fishing that per year that someone could do. So Carlos Raphael can take those interests and begin immediately to lease that out. The fines, the monies he gets in that regard go back to fines. But that can happen right away. Second thing, NOAA will allow Carlos to sell those vessels he had to non-interested parties, people that didn't have business, arrangements with him in any respect before. And that will increase, and that'll get new boats on the water and more fishing. The third thing that we have spoken about before, that is something I lobbied hard for myself, that's when they have to reconcile in terms of the overfishing, the illegal fishing that was done by Carlos Raphael. That he fished and exceeded those quotas, so they had to reconcile that. The one thing I fought hard for was to have them consider not penalizing people going forward, what I considered a double penalty. By that I mean they've already lost out on fishing. So when you're looking at paying back or reconciling that illegal fishing amount, that now that period and the fish that were lost during that period won't be counted again next year. So what it means of the 8 species, major species of fish, when the next season begins, there won't be further restrictions and further limitations on fishing for the 8. The only one that isn't is flounder, and that's 33 tons, not an enormous amount, but that's what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that starting in the next cycle that they weren't going to have to go back and suffer because of the actions of a person that acted illegally and look at lesser amounts in that quota. So this is all good news. It means things can start happening immediately, and it means going forward that there's not going to be penalty for those illegally caught fish, burdening people and limiting how much they can get for fish, how much fish they can catch going into the next cycle. So this is the news that we wanted to hear, and now it's official.
We're speaking with Congressman William Keating, who, of course, is our congressman down here. For those of you who are just joining the program, for those of you who are just getting up, who haven't had your coffee yet, we've got breaking news for you. Congressman, if you could just go back and talk a little bit about your efforts and some of the things that were going on behind the scenes, those things that you can disclose here on the air for our listeners to understand exactly what took place with NOAA and how you guys were able to finally bring a conclusion to this and to get people back fishing on the water.
Well, to put it in the largest perspective possible, I think most listeners, most people in New Bedford certainly know, there was illegal activity being done by Carlos Raphael. That's already a fact. That's been adjudicated. And so many people, innocent people, were caught up because of his illegal actions. We tried to push as much as we could. The process going forward as quickly as we can. People know that fishing wasn't, allowed during this period when the court case was unraveling itself, and when they were trying to come through with a plan going forward to protect this from happening again. So finally, just in the last hour, it's official that the plan going forward has been accepted, and that means immediate leasing of the amount of fish, the quota that can be caught in a year. That starts right away. It also means going forward that Carlos Rafael can sell those boats to non-interested parties, people that weren't caught up in his business, illicit business activities. And third, that as we go forward, as they have to reconcile, the illegal fish that were caught, they're not going to penalize people in the future trying to make up for that illegal fishing. So this is all good news.
All good news.
And it's finally started.
Excellent. We're speaking with Congressman Keating. So this will be millions of dollars coming back into the city of New Bedford, into the ports of New England.
Finally, it's been a burden, not just on the people directly involved in fishing. Don't forget that all the other ancillary activities, the secondary businesses that spring from this, have been penalized too. And these are all innocent parties caught up in the as a result of the illegal activities of Carlos Rafael. So, now we can move forward. They have unfortunately suffered because of his actions. But now, things are reconciled, and we're moving forward. There's a plan moving forward. There's protections so it won't happen again moving forward. And importantly, when they have to reconcile all the fish that were caught illegally and try and reduce the amount by that, they're going to completely take into consideration what was lost with this delay, so that it doesn't spring into the future of fishing in the New Bedford area. So this is what we wanted. We were pushing to get it done as quickly as possible. It couldn't be done more, quickly enough in terms of what we have. But I think, certainly we've all worked. Everyone that's concerned about this, local officials, state officials, our office, and certainly the industry, we all worked to move the ball forward a little bit. This is so now it's official.
Hey, it's great news, right, Congressman? You can't say it any other way than it's just great news.
It's great news, and it's a great relief now, because people now know what the plan is. They know what can be done and what can't be done. And before that, they couldn't. They were just held, even though they've eliminated it, I guess, in terms of the church. Everyone was held in limbo.
Right.
And it wasn't a very pleasant limbo.
That was a Catholic reference. That was a Catholic reference for you folks that didn't get that.
That's right.
So we're speaking with Congressman William Keating. So, Congressman, before we move forward on some of the other issues that are going on here in the country, you're saying this fishing will start immediately, or as immediately as these things can get going?
Start immediately.
Immediately.
So that gets the ball rolling right away.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, we've certainly, once again, want to thank you for, it's not a tradition that you break news. It's like a semi-tradition, though, here on our weekly show that you break news.
It's kind of incredible, because we scheduled this days ago.
Right.
And it happened within the hour. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
So I don't know. In terms, you've got a horseshoe, I guess, somewhere.
Somewhere.
When it comes to your, yeah.
So wonderful. Well, so that's great. Look, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and of course, you have a bird's eye view on it. Sitting there as one of the ranking members on foreign relations. Talk to us. It seems like it was a month ago now, but talk about the president's visit with Helsinki and Russia and your thoughts.
Well, this is quite disturbing from a national security standpoint. Honestly, the references to not accepting an attack by a hostile country, standing side by side with Putin. Discussion is always good, but not in the obsequious way of the way this was handled, frankly. But more importantly, going forward now, there was a 2-hour meeting that was done one-on-one. No one knows, including policymakers in Congress, and his own team. No one knows what was agreed to, and now we're relying on Putin and the press, if you want to call it, certainly not a free press, from Russia, going forward, telling us what happened in that meeting, what was allegedly agreed to. Now, I'll tell you this. Putin has already issued statements that Syria was discussed and there might be a plan, and the indication is Bashar al-Assad is all set now. We have problems with that. He's slaughtered hundreds of thousands of his people. We have soldiers there right now, military. We don't know what that means when Putin said that was agreed to. He also said there was economic agreements that came up that were agreed to. Now, to me, that's a code word for sanctions. When I've been to Russia, and I've been to Russia a couple of times, you know, things are straying now, so certainly not there. But I've had discussions dating back years. Their number one goal, because they run like a criminal syndicate of oligarchs, is to take the sanctions, the restrictions, and the money that's being frozen by the U.S. against these oligarchs for their activities against our country, and get them freed up. And now it seems to be what these economic discussions touched upon this. And incredibly, and the president announced this, there's talk about moving our diplomats and letting the KGB, the GRU and FSB, their intelligence groups, start interrogating our diplomats in Russia. And the president indicated in Helsinki, that's a good idea. So I've got to tell you, there is alarm on both sides of the aisle here in Congress, both chambers and both sides of the aisle, saying, what the heck has been agreed to? And so this is frightening. And it's not just our administration, his administration, who was not allowed in the room. It's not just the House and the Senate. It's our allies. And they are quite concerned, too, our NATO allies, what was agreed to and what wasn't. So to say that there's concern is an understatement.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating, who's our congressman here in southeastern Massachusetts. Congressman, we've heard a lot of pushback on NATO. I know that you deal quite regularly with the folks over there in the EU, in Europe, because of your position on trade. Are you hearing anything about how NATO feels, or the different partners in NATO feel about President Trump's visit?
Well, you know, when he left, I must say this, despite statements that were made before, I think I have much more positive feeling about NATO relationships going forward. Things are solidified there. You know, there was, as we walked away from those meetings, the U.S., I think, and the partnership with our NATO allies remained strong. So people should take that for the time being and say that's not a concern. When the president came home and started talking about one of the NATO countries, that we wouldn't necessarily come in, as the crux of the whole NATO agreement is attack one, attack all, and we're there. And there were statements when he came home that, he didn't think we should have to defend one of the countries. So that caused a little bit of a disruption. But from my perspective, people should know that the security relationships we have are still secure. We're still cooperating. We're sharing information. We're together. So I would say from that part, there's not quite the alarm as there is on the issue of acknowledging that the Russians attacked us, acknowledging who is responsible. Putin. Putin directed this. Our intelligence not only said that the Russians attacked us, they were in over 20 states' voting machines with the capability of manipulating that and who's on that list. But they also said Putin individually directed it. And so, you know, we have to call it what it is if we're going to deal with this situation. So that aspect of the trip remains a great concern. The unraveling coming home, where the president said, oh, he meant to say wouldn't, and he said would versus wouldn't. But that was, no one believes that because it doesn't make sense in the whole context of what was said. But then again, afterwards, he's still saying, well, it could be other countries. So we have a real problem Russia, we're being told by our intelligence people, and I've been briefed, they're going full bore. Dan Coates, our National Director of Intelligence, and a Trump appointee, said the red light is blinking. They're going, warning. They're actively engaged. So that side of the equation is certainly a grave concern for us.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating about all the things that have gone on since we talked to him last week, and there's been quite a few things that have gone on in the world, obviously, Congressman. Talking about these elections, isn't it so important that and we do this here in Massachusetts, as our listeners know, is you have to have paper ballots, right? I mean,
there was a Homeland Security, hearing just last week after I spoke to you, and I, interesting enough, two high-ranking Homeland Security officials, I asked them if they would acknowledge the Russians attacked us and they wouldn't do it, which is amazing. They're supposed to be in charge of helping our local officials in their elections. And at that hearing, I said, for this election in particular, which is just a few months, the entire country should be on paper ballots, at least have provisional ballots as well, kept on a paper ballot. Mm-hmm. Because they can do everything they want, and it makes it so much harder if we have the paper ballots mm-hmm. there. Even then, there's threats, but that is something we should do, but it's not being required.
All right. So, Congressman, listen, I'm going to let you go. We have significant news out of you today.
That's right. You're probably looking at, we have 2 minutes on the clock for a vote. So,
right.
You're probably looking at that. So,
your staff actually texted me.
To go. All right.
Yeah, you have to go. But go. Thank you very much, Congressman. Thanks again for the great news. That was Congressman Bill Keating, who has 2 minutes to go vote on his bill. I'd hate to be responsible for them saying Congressman Keating didn't have a 100% voting record because I kept him on the radio. But great news on the fishing industry. Interesting news on NATO. I think he calmed us down a little bit there by saying, look, the NATO stuff is strong, while at the same time, criticizing some of the things that the president said. So tell you what, this is... we're going to take a very quick break here on the show. If you missed any of that interview, of course, later in the day, it will be available on the WBSM app. Our WBSM app, which you can download for free for Apple or Android phones. All right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on 1420 WBSM.